use the panel chat because I do not have permission to make a panel chat, or no, a specific chat for this, and also it is currently time. So I'm done struggling. Yeah. Okay. We are starting now. Hi, everyone. I am so excited to be speaking at OtherCon this year, and I hope everyone else is enjoying the con so far. My name is Azure. You may also call me Bede. I answer to both. I like he, him, she, her, and buns pronouns. And I am a multitude of things. I am a demon, a fallen angel, if you want to get technical. Oh, thank you. Uh, Destler. I think that's how you say it. Thank you. Uh, I am a fallen angel if you want to get technical, and my main fictotype is, you'll never guess based off of my names, Beat from Pokemon. Shout out to any Pokemonkin listening. Hi, hello. Um, I've been active in the Ultrahuman community for around 5 years now, and I was the head and sole mod of From Friction Kind, which is a zine which I released in late 2022, aiming to explore the experiences of those who have a fiction-based identity. If you are interested, you can download it. One moment. Here. I myself am a grab bag of disorders and disabilities, most of which I won't list, but what is relevant to this panel is that I am in fact autistic. Not only that, but I have done, by all metrics, way too much research into autism, and I am also an autistic activist. To preface, although this panel is going to specifically name drop and talk about autism a lot, I am sure that there are lots of different beings that can relate to what I'm going to talk about, not just other neurodivergencies and disabilities either. Most of what I am going to be talking about today could resonate with any oppressed being's experiences, and I welcome all discussion about the similarities of different experiences with open arms. But for the sake of transparency, I'm not very good at talking off the cuff, so I'm going to be spending the bulk of this panel reading from a pre-prepared script. If anyone is interested in a transcript, it is available on Google Docs for viewing. I will send it in the panel chat right now, so that anyone who needs it may read along for word processing purposes. To prepare for this panel, I took a survey polling autistic alterhumans, which was taking responses from March 7th to July 1st, so around 4 months. I was hoping for around maybe 90 participants, but that number was blown out of the water with over 500 responses. I will be going over those results later on in the panel, and I will also be referencing the anonymous freeform responses. The very last point of my preamble here is to warn that this panel may not be suitable for all audiences. This lecture contains extended discussion of ableism, and while I try to keep the mentions brief, there will be specific talk of disabled folks, including children, being hurt. If you're unable to handle that at this time, that's absolutely fine. So please take care of yourself and have a great con either way! This panel aims to explore the relationship between autism and alterhumanity by looking at the history, the modern autistic community, and what real alterhumans have to say on the topic. I hope to perhaps not explain, but look into why it is that neurodivergency is seemingly so common in the alterhuman community, and whether it's because of correlation, causation, or perhaps something in between. Let's start off with a question, and feel free to try and guess in the panel chat. What do fairies, aliens, and crystals all have in common? Do we have any guesses? You got it right. The correct answer is that all three of these things have been used to try and claim autistic children as non-human. Let's get into the specifics of the topics, starting from the top with fairies. The changeling is a form of fairy found in European folklore. Also referred to as an oaf historically, the changeling is a fairy that is left in place of an identical human child when they are stolen away by other fairies. This is to say, parents believed that their human child was being replaced by an identical fairy child. There were multiple tricks that were thought to fend this off. When you believe that you already have a changeling, though, there were less ways to go about that. Historical records and tales of changelings, unfortunately, imply that the solution chosen for a changeling child was often infanticide. Many modern psychologists now believe that most tales of changelings developed in an attempt to explain disabled children. This includes, but is not limited to, deformities, Down syndrome, Williams syndrome, cerebral palsy, and, of course, autism. The fact that boys are more often born with birth defects lines up with the touted belief that boys were more likely to be taken away by fairies. Furthermore, see what is called regressive autism. This so called phenomena occurs when a child appears to develop, quote unquote, normally until they start showing symptoms of autism in their later years. Now, what actually happens in these cases is that they never notice their child's autistic traits until those later years. But the fact that there is still a name for the sudden perceived shift in an autistic child shows the sheer amount of cases that are like this even today. Now imagine how bad it was hundreds of years ago before we even had a word for autism. This sudden shift perspective very much parallels the supposed markings of your child being replaced by a changeling. For example, it was said that signs of your child being a changeling included them behaving in odd ways, like jumping around, spinning, and moving a lot when they think they're alone, like it's stimming, and having this odd obsessive impulse to count things like they're toys or not speaking. I swear, looking through the list of signs of a changeling is like reading the DSM criteria for ASD. Second verse, same as the first aliens. Although the term starseed has been picked up in the Ultrahuman community as a way to describe oneself as an alien, starseeds, or star children, didn't originate in the Alterhuman community. Their existence is a theory put forth by Brad Seiger, and I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, and the 1976 book, Gods of Aquarius. It posits that some humans originated as extraterrestrials and arrived on Earth through either birth or by taking over an existent human body. Generally agreed upon signs that you or someone you love is the star seed, according to believers, include that person feeling like they don't belong, being hyper empathetic, which is actually a sign of autism, despite what the stereotypes would have you believe, introversion, and actually, I'm just going to quote this in its entirety. In What is a Starseed and 50 Clear Signs You Are One, published by the Spirit Nomad, the first listed sign is, quote, you are highly sensitive. You easily feel overwhelmed and drained when you are in spaces with many people and with intense stimuli, like shopping malls, clubs, and networking events. You may also be sensitive to stimulants like coffee, alcohol, and even dark chocolate. End quote. You think I'm joking about these things just listing autism symptoms. I'm not. Finally, crystals. Crystal children and indigo children are both believed to be the sort of next step in scientific evolution, according to New Age circles. More specifically, crystal children are the newest generation, while indigo children were the first wave, from around the 70s to the 90s. I'll just be calling both of these waves crystal children for the sake of simplicity, but know that they are just two waves of the same thing. Crystal children are believed to possess special or supernatural abilities, such as telepathy. Autistic children having telepathy, as we all know, is the plot of Mob Psycho 100. Signs that your child is a crystal child include high empathy, being perceived as strange by others or intelligent for their age, see the gifted autistic kid phenomenon, and being sensitive to the point of fussing in crowded spaces. It's also said that crystal children may struggle in socially conventional schools because of their dislike of rigid authority, being smarter than their teachers, and their lack of response to guilt, fear, or manipulation based discipline. Read indirect communication. It's actually a noted phenomenon that many parents, when confronted with a diagnosis like a learning disability, ADHD, or autism, will alternatively label their child as a crystal child. Autism researcher Mitzi Waltz noted this phenomenon and spoke about it in a 2009 issue of the Journal of Religion, Disability, and Health. He suggests that parents recategorize autistic symptoms as telepathic powers to attempt to reconceptualize these autistic traits as a part of a more conventionally positive identity. He also puts into words why this can be harmful, stating that parents could refuse to acknowledge their child's impairments, refuse accommodations, and, quote, transmit belief systems to their child that are self aggrandizing, confusing, or potentially frightening, end quote. Believe it or not, there are actually more examples of myths or conspiracy theories that attempt to explain autistic children as non human, but I'll leave it at those three. Let's take a brief look into modern media now, specifically the autistic coded robot trope. A lot of times when humans try to write robots or AI or such, they think that they just take all the essential things that make humanity what it is, and they take away a few things. Make them not express empathy, they don't get non-literal phrases. They obviously speak in monotone. We can sprinkle in like a little bit of feeling out of place with humanity for flavor, and it's autistic. Your robot is autistic. To name some examples of this trope, think Data from Star Trek or Zane from Ninja Go. The trope is more or less echoed beat for beat with the autistic coded alien trope. Examples of this flavor of the trope include Peridot from Steven Universe, Spock from Star Trek, or, and I'm very sorry for anyone I'm about to violently throw back into 2016 with this, Keith from Voltron. Because non humanity is so often linked to autistic beings by the culture around us, desiring to be non human or connecting with non humanity is now a recognized part of autistic culture. We often feel out of place in neurotypical society. Join autistic spaces and you'll see jokes like, "What kind of non human did you think you were as a kid?" In case you're wondering, the answer to that joke is a werewolf for me. Growing up thinking that the reason behind your autistic traits is because you're secretly non human is a common experience. Jokes about desiring a tail and to purr will often go viral within autistic spaces because there are forms of natural and nonverbal communication that shows those around us that we are happy. The topic of non-humanity within autistic culture is also talked about within professional settings, such as in Kim Duff's speech, The Role of Changeling Lore in Autistic Culture at the 1999 Autreat Conference of Autism Network International. There is also discussion of how autistic beings oftentimes connect with animals better than with humans. For example, Temple Grandin is an autistic animal behavioralist who has written extensively on her being autistic helps her understand 2004's Animal in Translation using the mysteries of autism to decode animal behavior, and in 1997's Thinking the Way Animals Do Unique Insights from a Person with a Singular Understanding. In more modern times, we have the 2022 article, How Autism Connects Me with Animals, in which Emily Moran Barwick writes, quote, I knew how profoundly frustrating, isolating, and demoralizing it was to be unable to convey what I wanted to convey. I knew how it felt to never be truly understood, and it broke my heart thinking of what non-human animals were experiencing at the hands of humans. That no matter how desperately and clearly they communicated their terror and pain, that they were ignored and discounted. End quote. All of these connections have led to the creation of subcultures in an attempt to reclaim the dehumanization put onto us. To name one popular example, Oi Punk is a subculture created by the Tumblr user Erotaro in the 2010s, and more or less hinges on this idea. Key point of this subculture include rejection of the norm, embracing non-humanity, and comfort in the unknown. In the words of its creator, quote, it's not the same as otherkin, because it's not really like, ah yes, I am a cat slash dragon slash wolf slash that one guy from a homestuck slash etc. It's not necessarily something specific, and it's not necessarily literally believing that you're something other than human. It's, well, punk. Society puts a lot of messages about what it means to be human trademark that can make a lot of people who don't completely fit into that bill feel lost, broken, alone, or like they're doing something wrong. Void punk is about taking that message of you're not human and making it your own, throwing it back in society's face. You say I'm not human? Sure, okay, that's chill. Why does being human, trademark, have to be such a goal to aspire to anyway? What's so great about humanity? End quote. She then goes on to specifically, sorry, I looked at the chat and the gift made me laugh. um, she then goes on to specifically name drop neurodivergence as one of the target audiences for the subculture as well. She also later answers and asks to clarify, quote, someone who doesn't face dehumanization cannot be void punk, end quote. So, where does all this information intersect with the notable number of autistic alterhumans? Well, that's just the question, isn't it? Is it possible that alterhuman identity may correlate with those who have identities and neurotypes which are demonized by society? After all, queer beings are common within alterhuman spaces too. And if there is a correlation, is there causation there as well? There are already some terms coined to describe when alterhuman identity is caused or influenced by autistic traits, such as other spin, a term for when one's alterhuman identity is caused or influenced by special interests. Furthermore, Altervexo attempts to describe identifying as alterhuman out of spite for the dehumanization one has faced. However, to my knowledge, no term has been made or extensive talks had about voluntary or non voluntary alterhuman identity as having possible origins within dehumanization. So, I set out to have that conversation. As stated at the start of this panel, I ran a survey, mostly promoted on Tumblr, from March 7th to July 1st, posing questions to the autistic alterhuman community about their personal experiences, which got over 500 responses. 537 to be exact. I'd like to share the results of this survey with you now. The raw data collected is available. Here. I will also be posting both the raw data and the script for this panel to my Tumblr at Azure, but that's mostly for easy archival purposes. Now it's time for something that all autistic people love. It's numbers time, baby! I ask everyone to indicate if they agreed or disagreed with the statements that I made. For the statement, I believe my autism has influenced my alterhumanity in some way, shape, or form. 92% of those who took my survey agreed, and 8% disagreed, which is a wild split, far beyond notable. For the statement, I feel like the way autistic beings but are seen by society has influenced my alterhumanity. The split is a bit more even, with 72.4% agreeing and 27.6% disagreeing. This means that of those who I polled who agreed that autism influenced their alterhumanity, 78.6%, rounding down, also agreed that the way autistic beings are viewed in society influenced their alterhumanity. This is a rate a bit over 3 in every 4. The next question is one of the things that I asked more out of pure personal curiosity, which is whether or not they feel safe to be openly autistic in alterhuman spaces when compared to other spaces. Of those polled, 89.4% agreed and 10.6% disagreed, which made me quite happy. One anonymous being commented, quote, I generally find that most alterhuman spaces are a lot more accepting of autistic beings than wider society, if that makes sense. Going into alterhuman spaces, I'm never concerned about whether or not it will be safe or accessible for me. End quote. Someone else wrote in that they could testify to the opposite being true as well. Autistic spaces, in their experience, had a higher likelihood of being accepting of alterhuman identities. One moment, I'm going to take a sip of water. If you have water, take a sip as well. One being did answer no to this question and stated that they avoided alterhuman spaces for things related to this subject. They list an example, quote, like the refusal of tone tags, I understand not wanting them to be used for you, but banning them from the space altogether? And also, a lot of spaces, despite being accepting of autistic beings, is still find a way to hate the beings for being autistic. Making community spaces safe for autistic beings is an ongoing learning process for everyone involved. So please make sure to consult your local autistic advocate to make sure everything is accessible for those of all neurotypes. For the next question, I asked about everyone's specific experiences with Alterhumanity. Another question I asked, mostly out of curiosity, is would you consider Alterhumanity as a subject of special interest? 64.8% of the respondents answered no, and 35.2% answered yes. The next question, though, is really quite interesting for me. It asks if you have any kin types which originate from a piece of media, would you consider that kin type's source material a special interest? 69% of respondents, nice, answered yes, and 31% answered no. That's a pretty close percentage to the question about Alterhumanity as a special interest, but with the answers flipped. Indeed, many times in the section where I invite others to talk about their experience, there are respondents specifically name dropping that they believe their special interest contributes to their Alterhumanity. Some, but not all, of these instances include a space concept kin who had space as a special interest, two cat kin, with one having warrior cats as his past special interest and the other, cats in general, as one, and one who specifically wrote, quote, I feel as though my special interests in some media have influenced the fact that I identify with both real and fictional species. For example, I have a large number of original characters who are demons, and I feel like my special interest in them may have led me down the path of discovering myself as demonkin. When discussing the subject of autism influencing Alterhumanity, special interests were easily the thing that came up most, other than how autistic beings are seen by neurotypical society. The final multiple choice question I had asked, if you are a non-human kin type of any kind, do you experience species dysphoria and or euphoria? To this, 85.9% answered yes and 14.1% answered no. We can compare this to a survey not aimed at autistic alterhumans, specifically the Alterhumanity and Gender Survey, as conducted by Eli at Pantomorph on Tumblr. These results were posted on July 22nd of 2019 and reported that, in response to the question, do you experience species dysphoria, 4.9% answered I used to, 8.9% answered unsure, 22.7% answered no, 36% answered sometimes, and 27.6% answered yes. Adding up the percentages of I used to, sometimes, and yes, we get 68.5% of respondents who are certain that they have, at some point, experienced species dysphoria. This means that, according to these surveys, autistic alterhumans appear to have a higher chance of experiencing species dysphoria, with a 17.5% difference. Though keep in mind, I included euphoria in my question, and Eli did not. This would certainly require more data to confirm. However, this would at least warrant further polling, in my opinion. All of this talk of autistic beings and species dysphoria may have you thinking about the fact that autistic beings are statistically more likely to identify as transgender, with some estimates stating that transgender individuals are up to 6 times more likely to be autistic than cisgender individuals. This is because gender is stupid and autistic folks are not. Multiple respondents to this survey pointed that out. One being specifically wrote in, quote, statistically, autistic folks are more likely to know that they're trans than allistics, and I support the theory that that's got something to do with how autistic beings are seeing things without the lens of social cues and societal pressures, including more awareness about who we are and how we see ourselves. Society is like, you should be this, but autistics are like, but why? It doesn't really make sense. Plus, I don't fit into those standards anyway, so why not choose my own path in life? End quote. I definitely agree that the reason so many autistic folks identify as transgender may be similar to, or the same, reason that autistic folks seem to be more likely to be alterhuman. Hello to all trans autistic alterhumans listening, by the way. You call that a triple threat. Now, The final question I list multiple different Alterhuman identities and asked everyone to indicate which, if any, of the provided labels that they identify with. And indeed, my hypothesis when going into this question was proven correct. Of the terms that I provided, it was non human that most autistic Alterhumans identified with 74.9% of respondents identifying as Alterhuman. Other popular answers to this question included Therian, with 57.5%, and Fictionkin with a non human fictional character. Indeed, I did put two separate options for Fictionkin where they could indicate if their fictional kin type was human or not. 41, nope, 45.1% of respondents had a human fictotype. Let me try that again. 45.1% of respondents had a non human fictotype, and 41.2% of respondents had a human fictotype. There. So, autistic fiction can appear to have around a 9% rounding down higher likelihood of identifying with non human fictional characters. Unfortunately, I could not find another survey to compare this statistic against, but it's a statistic we have now nonetheless. Furthermore, I specifically listed three common kin types that have been associated with autistic beings as previously discussed: fairies, aliens, and robots/technology. Of these, tech kin was easily the most popular, with 19.9% of respondents identifying as such. Alien kin and fairy kin were close in numbers, with 11.2% identifying as alien kin and 11.9% identifying as fairy kin. On the subject of being robotkin, one being wrote in, quote, "I do not on a literal physical level believe that I'm a robot. However, tropes related to robots and the way that they behave and are treated feel analogous to my own lived experiences. So in some ways it feels as though I have experienced my life as a robot would." End quote. Which segues very nicely into the final question, which was a fill in the blank response. For this question, I prompted, if you'd have anything else you'd like to ask, please tell me about your own experiences involving your Alterhumanity and autism. Many took the chance to speak on if they felt like their autism and Alterhumanity were connected. As previously mentioned, lots of people mentioned their special interests as a factor. Lots of folks also said that they felt the two were connected but couldn't explain how, with the common sentiment being that it was a chicken or the egg situation. Two different beings whose kin types were their past lives wrote in, and both stated that a hypothetical, allistic version of them wouldn't be able to get memories as easily. Multiple beings also wrote in and said that they felt the awakening process was made easier due to their autism. They were so used to seeing themselves as different from everyone else and not understanding social cues, that they were more willing to take on a quote unquote weird solution as the source of their feelings. One one other commonly mentioned point included dehumanization as a reason for alterhumanity, autistic traits being similar to animalistic traits, and the possibly high related rate of autistic pagans and witches. Something that I didn't expect going in, but perhaps should have, is the amount of autistic alter beings who wrote about their struggle to find words to describe themselves. One ghost kin wrote in that they felt like their nonconformity to their kin type's typical associated traits, like darkness, doom and gloom, etc., was due to their autism, but they felt they didn't belong with other ghost kin because of it. A lot of folks wrote in saying that they had a lot of trouble figuring out what terminology to use, especially in regards to the ever dreaded identify with or identify as question. One being wrote in that they see themselves as psychological otherkin, but would be more accurately described as neurotype based or neurology based as an origin, due to their autism. However, this has caused some issues for them, as it is not seen as a quote unquote valid origin. Someone else describes having issues with this because the community does a lot of gatekeeping and because it's easier to find beings complaining about words being misused and the actual use of words. Now, there are some responses that I would like to read in full, or mostly in full, for your listening pleasure. The first one is as follows, quote, "When I was 6-ish, I started noticing that people treated me a bit like they treated our old Windows 98 Dell computer. The computer was inhuman when it worked, and praised for its distance from humanity. Yes, it can play videos from the internet. Isn't technology cool? And human when it broke down. Is getting overwhelmed. Give us a sec. She's blinking at me. I have no idea why this is such a difficult task. It ain't my fucking CD, stubborn POS." It's a bit frustrating that my autistic traits are only praised when they make me convenient for others to use. I'm self sufficient, I'm quiet, I'm a fast learner, and a thorough researcher, so I rarely need to bother another person to complete tasks I'm given. But because that's all anyone seems to want me for, it's a self fulfilling cycle which is useful for the neurotypicals but exhausting for me. And when it ends up in a burnout, inevitable, then I'm finally treated as human, but only because I've failed to be the computer they wanted. So I'm a computer when someone's pleased with me, and I'm a human when I've disappointed them. You can see why might like the idea of being a PC more than a person. Also, when something's wrong, computers' error messages are both clearer and harder to ignore than a human's request for accommodations. This is a bit of a bummer. Sorry. The upside is that I'm crazy good at data analysis now. End quote. That was excellently put. And I'm sure that many that may resonate with autistic tech kin. Another write-in reads, quote, one does not have to be autistic to be alterhuman or non-human, but one does have to be autistic to be my species. My species does not have human neurology or allistic neurology. To be my species, one must be autistic, although it's more that my species has neurology which all allistics would refer to as autism. I could not be my species if I wasn't autistic. End quote. This is a very interesting response. And to be honest, I sort of wish I knew what this being species was so that I could look more into it. It's almost like a sort of alternate view on the autistic non human or autistic aliens. And I find that just lovely. Then there is this submission. Quote, diagnosed with autism at 15 explained a lot. I can't help but wonder, if I'd known, would I still dehumanize myself in the way that I do? Other kids called me Catboy because when they would pick on me, I'd hiss at them. I don't know why. I think I just saw my cats do it, and it was the only way I knew how to retaliate. But it just makes them laugh. I stopped seeing myself as human a long time ago, more of an animal for people's amusement. But when I found out about otherkin, it was like suddenly this experience of mine was certain that I was alone in was shared. For some people, it's spiritual, but even in our differences, our feelings were the same. The community taught me not to love this non-human side of me, and there were understandings of my diagnosis. I didn't feel like an outcast here. They made me feel like it was something to be cherished, and I do. End quote. Again, absolutely well said. Reclaiming and celebrating non-humanity is, from what I've gathered, a large part of the autistic ultrahuman experience, and this response phrased it just wonderfully. Lastly, in regards to the responses, shout out to that one guy who said, I just finished making my first ever tale. Isn't that sick? Because yes, yes it is. Thank you so much again to all respondents to my survey. And so we have now reached the end of the discussion section, which will last. Oh, nope, we have now reached the discussion section, or the Q&A, which will last until my time runs out. This is where I will cease looking at a script, so please send anything you particularly like me to see now in the panel questions chat, and feel free to ask me questions. I will answer to the best of my ability. Alternatively, you can tell me about your experiences or just give general comments. And while I wait for panel questions, I am going to take a sip of water. Question: can someone be autistic without an official diagnosis? Yes. Yes. Um, we don't suddenly become autistic when we are diagnosed. I highly, 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 highly recommend the video "The Politics of Self-Diagnosis" by Alexander. I forget his last name, but it was uploaded very recently, and it is just an excellent video regarding self-diagnosis, the history of psychiatry, etc. Have you heard of Temple Grandin? She was one of the first people to openly come out as autistic, and she was one of the first autistic advocates. She was also one of the best animal behavioralists. She often wrote about how her autism helped her understand animals. Yes, 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 yes. I mentioned her. Her writing was like an immense help when creating this panel. This was an amazing panel. Thank you. How does someone figure out that they're autistic by doing self diagnosis? I have a literal Google Doc of resources if you think that you are autistic and need to do more research. So, like, I have my DMs open. If you need that Google Doc, literally just shoot me a DM and I will hit you up and give you the good stuff. Yeah, just DM me and I'll send it to you. So, so autism itself being an origin of otherkinity/therianism is more widely accepted than I thought. I wasn't sure if it was a valid reason to be kin, and this has been so helpful for my brain. Oh yeah, totally. No, yeah. I've seen a lot of people in the freeform responses mention autism as like a possible like origin, and it's something that I really wanted to look into with this panel. What are neurological beliefs in the context of alterhumanity? I'm not sure what you mean, to be honest. Neurological beliefs. Sorry, I don't. I don't get it. Do you ever think about how ableists will mock autistic behavior or traits, but deny that they're ableist because they're not mocking our autism, they're just mocking our weirdness? It was rampant among Antikin circa 2017. Yes, that is a big problem even today. A lot of people will mock autistic beings, and then when they say that they're autistic they will suddenly change tune. It goes from you're so weird to but you're the most normal person I've ever met. And the reason for this is that they don't want you to be autistic because that would make them ableist. If you're mocking autistic traits, that then you're ableist regardless if the person is quote unquote technically autistic or not. Seeing as how widely diverse autism and autistic traits are, how do you feel you could diagnose a species as autistic? I imagine that it is something that if it has a creator, the creator confirmed, or that like every known species uh is like coded as autistic. I'm not really sure because they did not specify. But for example, I know for a fact that the gems from Steven Universe are all considered neurodivergent because they don't have human neurology, and that they're all considered neurodivergent in canon by the creator. So you could say that all gems, which are an alien species, are all neurodivergent. I would recommend the silver. I would recommend the results of the Alterhumanity and gender poll, which I mentioned, I believe. I That might not be the be the title. It was by Eli either way. Was there any numbers on the frequency of this experience, or was it predominantly through a free report? And would you run this survey again with tailored questions based on the responses? I would love to do another survey on this. Like, I have like multiple ideas. um, and I would love to do like a follow up. 1 second, my brain is loading. There also was no number on the frequency. I didn't think to count. Now I wish I did. But if you want, you could DM me, so that I remember, and I will count the numbers of times that it is said and send it to you. What would you say to someone who's been told you think you're otherkin because you're autistic? I can expand if need be. Well, hmm, give me 1 second. Trying to think of how to phrase this. Thinking you're otherkin is just being otherkin, is it not? Like, you can't separate the part of yourself that is autistic from, like, your holistic self. That's why autistic beings prefer autistic beings instead of beings with autism. It's a part of us. Like, we can't have that universe where we don't we aren't autistic. So, like, does it matter if you think that you're otherkin because of your autism? Because either way, like, you're still experiencing the things that you're experiencing. Oh, someone tried to invalidate your otherkin? Kill them with a knife. For legal reasons, that's a joke. For legal reasons, that's a joke. Have you done any research on how many neurodivergent folks psychologically or spiritually identify? Given the results of this research, I'm suspecting a lot of people who would consider themselves alterhuman as a result of their autism would be more likely to psychologically identify. I did not ask any questions related to origin. However, in the follow up survey that I might do, I am definitely going to put that as a factor, or as a question rather. For other kin community reasons, that is not a joke. How do you describe that mix of non-human and human with that special blend of autism? Is there a sort of fix of sorts of it? I ask since I feel like I'm non-human due to people abusing my autism and casting me aside. I wonder if autism could possibly change it too. Hmm. I don't think there are any terms coined for that yet. I'm trying to think. Like I said, the only term that I know of. Well, yeah, exactly. Time to make a new term. Make it yourself. Oh, psychological kin is other kin or alterhumans who are alterhuman due to psychological reasons. This can range from like things related to neurotype, as we discussed during this panel, and it can also be like you believe that you have the brain of, for example, a dog. So I have been having overlapping experiences when I go into my elk shift. I am elk-hearted with horse behavior, and it overlaps to the point where I'm starting to question if I'm horse-hearted instead of elk-hearted. And yet I feel like it's not enough. That perfectly described other hearted view horses as very secret animals. So my point is that is it possible to be hearted with a hybrid species that cannot be possible in the mortal world? Sorry. Yes, absolutely. I don't see why not. Like we have we are there are people who are kin with things that don't exist in real life all the time. Like fiction kin, media kin exists. Like there are tons of Pokemon kin, even though Pokemon doesn't technically exist in real life. It's like, so it's like sort of the same thing. Sorry, I just got like a brain blast. Um, to Treasoner's question, Silicon's response, "Not quite human," reminded me of a term that I recently learned of. It's demi-human. I'm gonna type it in chat. It is a term which I learned of recently due to my research and creation of a Ultrahuman dictionary, and it basically means exactly what you think it means. It's like sort of human, but sort of not. Kind of bug, kind of snack. Oh, yes, I mentioned Altervexo in the panel as well. I love that term, it's great. Not specifically rhythm. Ooh, ooh, I'm bookmarking that, I'm gonna read the shit out of that. Oh, yes, I, have finished the dictionary, or it's currently, at a completed stage. It's not a work in progress. Let me pull it up really quick. Here it is. You can find the definition of demi-human here, along with a shit ton of other things. Definitions scratch my brain, exactly. Overhuman could also apply, if that hasn't been mentioned yet. I'll have to look into that, because I don't think I've heard of that, but it sounds cool. How many total terms are there in this? I have not counted, but a lot. Th Thank you, chaotic. Uh, 1 second. Don't count, you'll die. I'm kidding, I'm kidding. Does it count as alter vexo if you were, quote, unquote, "murdered" per se, forever changing? Uh, I became non-human due to others' actions. I think so. I think it's, like, the point of alter vexo is that, like, you became non-human due to, like, other people's cruelty, oppression, dehumanization, etc. You can look at the Alterhuman dictionary itself, the link that I saved, to see the specific definition, but that's how I understand it from the top of my head. Does anyone else experience sometimes hyperfixating on things so strongly that you start questioning some sort of kin link, etc., but the feeling ends up going away once the overall interest in the topic lowers? This happens to me sometimes, and I struggle to identify my own emotions and often get them wrong, and I can't help but feel a bit bad about it. No, I understand what you mean completely. I think that sounds like a fiction flicker, almost. A fiction flicker is sort of when, give me a moment. It's sort of when you're consuming a piece of media that you have a experience similar to media kin or fiction kin, but once you stop consuming that media, it fades away, and that doesn't make it less valid or less real or such as to compared to like more permanent states. Show me a state of like personhood or beinghood, I guess, that is permanent. So it's a pretty common experience. Dishuman, someone who has non human experiences which influence their ability to differentiate reality from imagination, fiction, or general unreality, and who has experienced exclusion or ostracization on a social level. Oh, that's good. I don't remember if I put that in my dictionary or not. And if not, then I'm going to bookmark it. Considering the autistic species, I do consider my kin type Silvari, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right, to be autistic. It's kind of vibes based rather than like some definitive proof. If you have questions about that, feel free to message me. I'm not the person who answered your survey, but since it seems similar, maybe. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry, I'm stumbling over my words a little bit because I'm very excited about this topic. But yes, I'll absolutely do that. Thank you. My experience re societal rejection has generally gotten better with adulthood and figuring out my other neurospices. Paradoxically, I think that gave me more confidence in exploring whether I was Therian. Kind of wish I'd known about the Therapy community 13 years ago, though. I also got into the other kin and alterhuman community only after my autism diagnosis. And it sort of lended to one another in like Me learning about the autistic community sort of lended to me learning about the Ultrahuman community. Like how Paradox Steven Universe indirectly led to my autism diagnosis, Kara Undertale led to my ultrahumanness. I think that the problem I run into with the Alterhuman community is that while I like categorization, too many microlabels and eye-searing and confusing flags makes it harder for us to follow and connect to the community. That's one of the many reasons we no longer engage with Alterhuman and especially plural community. I know YMMV. I don't know what that means, but I that's fine. That might be worth noting as something why autistics don't feel comfortable in the Alterhuman community, especially since it's very hard to avoid. I totally understand that. Yes. I read a very good essay about, I believe the term that was used as an example was fiction folk, um, and how it caught on naturally despite it being a pretty new term. I wish I had it on hand so that I could send it, but all the micro labels can make it pretty confusing for autistic beings to navigate, I think. Although autistic beings who do like having a bajillion little labels also might thrive in this sort of environment. So it's like a well, it's a spectrum is what it is. Not even a question, but thank you. A lot of things touched upon this panel hit close to home and even line up with how I've explained my alter humanity in the past. Oh, thank you. Or you're thanking me, so you're welcome. But thank you also for expressing that. That makes me so happy. I worked so hard on this panel. Mm, oh, wait. In a future survey, would you be interested in examining empathy in relation to autistic alter humanity? E.g., the model of the autistic coded robot being low empathy, but starseeds being associated with hyper empathy. Ooh, that's a good question. Oh, that's a really good question, actually. I will definitely try and figure out if I can include that if I do a follow up survey. Is it wrong to reclaim horror movie villains as an autistic person? No, I'm tempted to answer that no, even before reading the rest of the message, but I'm going to read the rest of the message anyway. Michael Myers, Billy Lenz, and Bubba Sawyer, and possibly many others, explicitly portray autistic and neurodivergent symptoms, and many autistic horror fans feel that horror movie villains are clearly meant to demonize autism, but some autistics find it very offensive to reclaim. Is it bad or not to do it personally? It's not bad at all. No, it's yours to reclaim. It like if other people are bothered by it, then they don't have to reclaim it. They don't have to look at it. Um, Are there certain animals slash therian identities that autistic people might identify as most, i.e., dogs or wolves? And if so, why? Hmm. I've seen it. This is my personal experience. Disclaimer, disclaimers, disclaimers. But I've seen a lot of autistic people or autistic beings identifying as catkin or feline kin or stuff around those lines. Um, and you can do some research and like, there is an, autistic symbol that is, like, a black cat with, like, a little bow tie made of, like, the, infinity symbol, it's very cute. Um, and, like, there's a book, I think, titled All Cats Are Autistic. There's, like, a lot of think pieces on how cats can reflect autistic traits, and why and I mentioned in my lecture specifically how autistic people can, like, make jokes about like, "Oh, I want a purr so that people can know that I feel happy without having to say it." Like, I think that autistic people and cats is very much like a thing that are connected somehow. Uh, but again, that's based off of my own personal observations. And then there's lovely piece of art. Um, I actually did have a piece of art, a comic that portrayed someone growing up thinking they're non-human and then finding out that they're autistic as they grow up that I wanted to show off for the panel. But I wanted to get permission from the artist first, and they never responded. So just know that it exists. I wonder if it's my autism, but I wonder if I stop seeing as games as mere games and more an alternate reality is an autism thing or not. It might be. I think it could be like an intensity of interest thing, like a special interest thing, or other something similar. However, I do think that I know some holistics who also see video games as and such as alternate universes, so it might not be autistic exclusive, but it might be like enhanced for lack of a better word. Did I stab a special interest there? Yes, yes, you did. It's such a ride because now you're gonna be stuck in a loop of is this a fictor type or just a flicker? Yeah, definitely. Very there, great topical webcomic. Give me a second, I'm gonna, like, physically write that down. YMMB, your mileage may vary. From what you've gathered from custom responses in the survey, were there a lot of beings saying that they're uncertain and or anxious about the use of alterhuman labels within the community and for themselves, or was it the opposite? I saw a lot of responses of people saying that they were unsure about where they fit or what labels fit them or like how like what words meant and that sort of stuff, you know? Like they were uncertain about like what basically what you said, alterhuman labels and which ones to use, and they were anxious about like accidentally using the wrong one. Um, which could come with what we discussed a couple minutes ago that were like there are so many like labels that like it's hard to find where you fit exactly. And it can be overwhelming for a lot of people or a lot of beings trying to switch to species neutral language recently. And it's harder to let go of than I thought. I apologize for that. I'm curious about different neurotypes and species identity now if there's any trends there. Yes. I'm also wondering that, and that is definitely going to be on my next survey if slash when I make it. I already mentioned cats and stuff. I'm really reminded of the older meme. I think my dog is autistic. Oh, I feel like I've seen a trend of dogs with PTSD. I know exactly what you're talking about. Dogs are often like in art also related to trauma and like trauma reactions and PTSD and abuse, and I think that there's definitely like some correlation there, like something. There's something there. Interesting that according to the survey, a lot of people don't consider their alter humanity a special interest, even though it can be a big part of one's identity. Why do you think that is? It could be a matter of its essential part, so it's a given as opposed to fictional typings. I think that it's like mm, I was going to say like how you can be LGBT without LGBT stuff being a special interest, but then I remembered that LGBT stuff is a special interest of mine, so I can't really speak to that. But I imagine it's similar to how autistic people can be LGBT without it being a special interest. Ooh. Oh yes, thank you, thank you, thank you. You can read my comic about other canon therians. They're there either on Tapas, which has the full size pictures embedded, or on Dreamwidth, which has the old discussion threads and screen reader friendly transcripts. I'd love a mailing list for Alterhuman surveys. Oh yes, definitely, definitely. Oh crap, my time's up. My time's up. But I'm also very interested in that. I would love to see someone do that, and if that happens, then I would love to see that happen. Um, So that's the end of the discussion. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening to me ramble. Get put so much love and energy into this panel, and just thank you for being so nice and asking questions. And I don't know, I had a great time. Thank you, everyone. Bye.